Rats with Team 4545 League analyzing the game between Salt of Life and Alex Ping. This was played in round 2 of team event number 53. Let's have a look. Okay. Black offers a Benoni type formation. Could even maybe make it a bingo gambit. Okay. Now I know in symmetrical English, a lot of times black would rather have the pawn on e6 rather than g6. This takes on certain Sicilian defense characteristics, may even be a Sicilian defense if you really look at it. Maroczy bind type position. Let's just see what happens. And now e4, now you've got almost have the classic Maroczy bind. There it is. Okay, so White plays bishop e2. Now, at this point, I really have to question what Black's doing here. It seems like he just doesn't understand one of the themes that Black is able to do in a Maroczy bind type position. And I'm not sure if you've seen this before. You might want to pause the video, see what you can come up with. It's not a win. It's just Black to play and continue with a plan. Okay, you've repaused or restarted the video. Did you consider the tactical move knight g4? Now it looks like it just drops a piece. Well, it doesn't, because White is deflected away from defensive d4. So just for instance, if bishop takes g4, Black can play bishop takes d4, and then something's got to give here. Bishop takes d4, now he's on the rook, but you take here and you're on the queen, and the queen takes. And now what's Black accomplished with this? Well, he's traded off a whole bunch of pieces. Okay, Black's playing to equalize. Black's never playing for a win until White makes a mistake. So sometimes if the best you can get out of a game is a draw, especially in a team match, that's a perfectly acceptable result. So with 3 of White's minor pieces that he wants to attack with gone, what are White's winning chances here? Well, they're there, but they're a lot slimmer. What's White do here? Well, first off, he's got to guard against the threat of knight c2 check, which just drops material. White can play rook d1, but then he has to be willing to allow knight c2 check and see if that might lead somewhere. Maybe Black can get away with that. Then the knight can just happily retreat to b4, and he's fine. He'll go to c6 if provoked any further. So maybe what White's best move here is just a castle, and nothing wrong with Black castling here. Or why not just offer a queen trade? Let's go for the end game, even. Okay. Now, I'm not going to analyze this position out. It's kind of purely fantasy to see what could happen here. But Black doesn't have to play queen d7. He can castle himself. He could play knight e6 and then figure out what to do. The knight's on a very good square there. Although White might be trying for f4 and f5 to dislodge it, but the knight's fine on d4. Black could even consider e5 here, just anchoring it in. Although it does give him a backward pawn, that's not something White's able to exploit right away. And then eventually Black will generate some counterplay with a6 and b5. But like I say, I'm not trying to analyze this position out. I'm just showing the possibility that one needs to be aware of. So what Black does is he prepares knight g4. He plays h5. And I have to believe that that's what Black is trying to do here. I don't think Black's trying to run the pawn up to h3 and try to counterattack White's king if he castles kingside. So I think it just comes from Black not realizing the potential strategies that are available in some of these openings. Okay, so White just says, "Phooey, you're not going to g4." And actually, I like White's game a lot here. As a result, it's up to Black to prove that he understands how to break the Maroczy bind, and the way to do it is you get developed, then you play for a6 and b5. You got to prepare that in, and then eventually you break with d5, and that's the tried and true strategy to equality with the Maroczy bind. Okay, so Black castles, and White just continues on with his development. And this is a fine move by White. If you looked at the game that I just posted, what was it, Fledermaus and Poisson, I think, it reached symmetrical English type formation, and I discussed the merits of playing knight c2. It does so many things in the White position. Eventually White can remaneuver that bishop on e3 and plunk a knight in on e3, and d5 is his. And so I really liking White here. And Black needs to get something going here, or he's just going to get suffocated, especially since he's weakened his king side a little bit and still hasn't completed his development. I've mentioned it countless times. I'll mention it again. There's that queen, bishop, and queen rook still sitting on their original squares. Black has given odds, at least for now, of a rook and a bishop. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so much for that. The bishop comes in, and that may or may not be the best square. It does contemplate some counterplay on c4, which, although it's defended, it can be attacked a little bit. So it's not a bad move. Bishop d7 was an alternative, and then prepare b5 down the line. Okay, and then White plays knight d5, and let's see, Black just plays knight d7. And this is thematic. This is good. It kind of follows with some of the strategies that Black would like to implement in this line when he breaks with b5. The idea is to get the knight into c5 to go along with the b5 thrust, but still Black's not quite ready to play b5. It's still going to be a little while. Anyway, now this is not the correct move. It's just kind of a waste of time. White is concerned about guarding that pawn. Well, let Black have it. Okay, let's just back up. Just castle. Okay, if you castle, what's White going to do? Take the pawn? Let him. Okay. Now we have to deal with our rook. Now, how's Black going to defend that bishop? He can't really bring any piece to defend it, so he's got to bring it back. Okay, and then now White just happily takes on b7. Now the b5 break is permanently gone. Now it's true White has an isolated pawn on c4 that might have been exchanged, but look at White's gained here. He's got a rook on the 7th rank. He's got potential to double rooks on the b file. So what's Black going to do? Well, Black could try knight c5, I suppose. Now White probably doesn't want to take that knight off with his bishop, but just a quiet move like, let's see, maybe you have to go all the way back. You can't play rook b6. Let's see. Oh, no, not quite. But it's not a bad move to take on c5. But I'm just looking at this again. What I had planned earlier doesn't work. But okay, bishop takes, and once again, White's really got a fine game. He can double rooks. He's kept his rooks on the open file. He can reinforce the knight on d5 with knight from c to e3. Although Black would then have useful moves, maybe like bishop d4. But when you can get this kind of activity, you just have to go for it, because good things can happen when you have a rook on the 7th rank. Not always, but more often than not. And the White Knights are really active here. Although the game is basically probably level, White's just got so much more play than he did before, and he hasn't had to weaken his own king side by launching a pawn storm against the weakened Black king side. So just an alternative for consideration. But rook b1, maybe the rook doesn't want to go to b1. It just spends a tempo later that Black might have, or White might have found useful. Okay, so now f5. This is another common break in the Marazzi bind, is to try to and similar of these positions, which are symmetrical Englishes, which in a way this is. And Black's trying to undermine the White center a little bit and get some activity for his rooks. It does weaken e6, which Black has under his control, but it turns out Black's going make a mistake and allow white access to e6, and it's going to cost him the game. So in retrospect, what else could black have done here that's logical? Well, you got to go back and you got to play for that plan of b5, and you're not ready for it yet. It might take a little time, but you know, knight c5. Well, then maybe b4 comes in. You could play, if you play rook b8 here as black, you're ready to play b5 next move. So what's white going to do? Maybe white's going to play a4. Okay, fine. Black definitely has some active moves here at his disposal. He's got the e5 square they can stick a knight on, and it's a very useful square to have under control. White really can't get rid of it because, like, if he plays f4, then the knight happily goes into g4. You know, just to show you, knight from d to e5, and it's applying some pressure on c4. Like I say, white can't really play f4 because then this knight just gets all kinds of activity. And notice the white isn't even castled yet. So let's just back up. So f5 might be ambitious, but there were some alternative plans. And then white finally castles and completes his development more or less. And you can't fault that strategy. It does give white an isolated pawn. Okay, but really now to follow up, black really needs to get a knight into e5. It's just screaming to be played, and it's white. It is black's move, and he just makes a mistake. He takes on d5, I believe. This is just absolutely atrocious. I'm sorry to say that, because what it does is it gives away control of d4, and you'll see why in a moment. Let me just back up. Okay, if knight from d7 to e5, this is just a tremendous move. Okay, you're planning to play knight g4 next, okay, and put the question to that bishop. Where's it going to go? What's black gonna or white gonna do? Maybe king h1, so that if knight g4 comes in, the bishop can tuck itself back to g1. That's a possibility. Maybe white would trade a set of rooks, and if the queen takes back, swing the other rook over to f1, tempo the queen. But then at the end of that, there's a potential hanging pawn on b2 to some tactics. Here, I'll just show you. Okay, take. Now where's black going to put the queen? Let's just put it on e8 for the simple argument that it's potentially supporting a b5 thrust. Okay, now black does have this move in mind, knight g4, that white's got to deal with. What's he going to do? h3. Again, it's long and involved. This is where you burn the midnight oil and start satisfying yourself that if you'd played differently, you could have had a different outcome. And we can't analyze everything out to death. That's impossible. But what happens, unfortunately, is it just the game just turns quickly in white's favor after this move, because even though black still gets a knight into e5, he got the wrong knight into e5. And now you'll see why. Because black plays knight d4, and suddenly e6 is threatening to be occupied, and black's got to be very, very careful here. What can he do? He can't really play knight c5 because b4 kicks it right out. So black's very close to having a lost game here. So he gets rid of a little pressure and takes off a rook, and the idea of that was to go in and guard e6, but now instead of that knight being active on e5 and threatening to menace the white position, it's now a defensive piece, and white is able to have a knight on d4 of his own that he couldn't get. Black could have traded it off if the knight was able to stay on c6. So white just continues with active play, and probably at this stage what black should do is just I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to remember what he did. Wait, yeah, e6 is just loses. He actually needs to play bishop takes h6 here, even though a lot of people wouldn't want to do a move like that because it brings the queen right into the heart of the black camp. But if you think about it, it's really not all that bad. White doesn't really have a follow-up to continue to attack the black position. So black could play queen d7 here, and you got to be careful. Rook takes f8. Yeah, I'm just seeing if this is possible. Rook takes f8. Rook takes. Now, well, no, black's defending this. Okay, so anyway, if you take it, at least black's surviving, and g6, although it's weak, it's covered. It's got two knights holding it down, and white's gonna have to try something in here to try to get active to generate something, and I don't quite see an exact continuation. So this was preferable to what black did, and white may still be a little better off here, but anyway, e6 just flat out loses because white has tactics. Okay, take here and pause the video, white to play and do the best he can. Okay, you've restarted. What did you find? I hope you found this move. Rook takes f8, and this just kills black. He's got no reply. Either the king or queen takes the rook, and he gets a knight fork on e6, and if the queen moves away, he just loses his rook. So he would have lost a rook and a piece. So black resigned. Very nice combination by white. There was some potential here for both sides to equalize or have a tough road ahead of them, but we don't always play the best. But through the analysis of a game, we can go in and try and find out better ways to improve and thus improve our game so that we can play better next time. Once again, thank you all for your time, and I'll see you soon with another game. Take care.